You're in the middle of a sentence, fully aware of what you want to say, and suddenly the word disappears. It's right there, yet unreachable. The pause feels awkward, sometimes embarrassing, and many women between 30 and 45 quietly worry something is wrong with their brain. In most cases, this experience has nothing to do with intelligence or memory loss. It's hormonal. Word retrieval is one of the most hormone-sensitive brain functions. Hormones like estrogen, progesterone, cortisol, thyroid hormones, and insulin influence how quickly language centers communicate and access stored words. After 30, natural hormone fluctuations, stress, poor sleep, and blood sugar changes can temporarily disrupt this process even when overall memory feels normal. In this video, you'll learn why words disappear mid-sentence, which hormones are involved, and how to support clear, confident speech naturally. Estrogen and word. Recall the hormone behind language flow. When the word is there until it isn't. You know exactly what you want to say, but mid-sentence the word vanishes. It feels like your brain hits a brief pause, even though your thoughts are clear. This frustrating tip-of-the-tongue moment becomes more common for many women after 30, and one major reason is estrogen's role in language and word retrieval. How estrogen supports language in the brain. Estrogen directly affects areas of the brain involved in language, especially regions responsible for verbal fluency, word recall, and smooth speech. It supports neurotransmitters like acetylcholine and dopamine, which help brain cells communicate quickly and efficiently. Estrogen also improves blood flow to language centers and strengthens connections between neurons. When estrogen signaling is steady, words are easier to access, sentences flow naturally, and speech feels effortless. What changes after 30? After 30, estrogen doesn't simply decline, it begins to fluctuate. Levels can rise and fall unevenly across the menstrual cycle and from month to month. These fluctuations affect how consistently estrogen can support language processing. On days when estrogen support is lower, word retrieval slows, verbal fluency drops slightly. Pauses in speech become more noticeable. This doesn't affect intelligence or overall memory. It affects speed and access. Why word loss feels sudden. Words are stored correctly in the brain. The issue isn't loss, it's access. Estrogen helps keep the pathways to words open. When estrogen signaling dips, those pathways briefly narrow. The word is still there, but the brain needs more time to reach it. This is why the word often comes back a few seconds later or after the conversation ends. Why this can come and go. Many women notice word-finding issues aren't constant. Some days feel sharp and fluent. Other days feel slower. This variability strongly points to hormones. Estrogen levels change throughout the cycle, and language centers respond quickly to those shifts. Stress, poor sleep, or skipped meals can amplify the effect by interfering with estrogen signaling. Common symptoms women notice. When estrogen-related word recall is affected, women often experience forgetting common words mid-sentence, pausing while speaking to search for words, knowing the meaning but not the word itself, feeling articulate one day and foggy the next, increased self-consciousness while speaking. These symptoms are subtle but emotionally uncomfortable. Why this is often misunderstood. Word loss is often associated with aging or cognitive decline, which creates fear. In reality, estrogen-related word-finding issues are functional and temporary, not degenerative. The brain isn't losing information, it's experiencing reduced hormonal support for fast retrieval. How stress interferes with estrogen's role. Chronic stress raises cortisol, which interferes with estrogen signaling in the brain. Even when estrogen is present, cortisol can block its effects. This is why word loss is more noticeable during stressful conversations, public speaking, multitasking, fatigue. The combination of estrogen fluctuation and stress makes access harder at the moment. Doctor-approved ways to support estrogen-related word recall. Supporting verbal clarity is about reducing interference. Helpful support includes consistent restorative sleep, managing stress to lower cortisol, eating regularly to stabilize blood sugar, gentle movement to improve brain blood flow, avoiding chronic overstimulation. These habits allow estrogen to support language centers more effectively. Estrogen plays a direct role in how easily words are accessed during speech. After 30, fluctuations in estrogen can slow word retrieval not because your brain is failing, but because hormonal support has changed. When estrogen signaling is supported and stress is reduced, word recall often becomes smoother, more confident, and far less frustrating. Cortisol and mental interruption: how stress breaks speech. When words disappear under pressure. You may notice that word loss happens more often when you're stressed, rushed, or put on the spot. The moment feels pressurized, your mind goes blank, and speech stalls. This isn't nervousness or lack of knowledge. For many women after 30, it happens because cortisol interrupts access to language centers in the brain. What cortisol does to brain function. Cortisol is released during stress to help you respond quickly. In short bursts, it can sharpen focus. But when cortisol is elevated or spikes suddenly, it shifts brain activity away from higher thinking functions, including language processing. Cortisol prioritizes survival responses over communication. The brain temporarily reallocates resources to areas involved in alertness and threat detection, reducing access to word retrieval pathways. Why stress causes sudden speech. Pauses. Under stress, blood flow shifts away from the brain's language and planning centers and toward areas responsible for rapid reaction. This makes verbal fluency harder at the moment. The words don't disappear permanently. Access is simply delayed until cortisol settles. This is why speech often returns smoothly once the pressure passes. Why this gets worse after 30. After 30, hormonal buffering against stress weakens. Progesterone, which normally calms the nervous system, often declines. Estrogen, which supports brain communication, fluctuates. Without these buffers, cortisol spikes feel stronger and more disruptive. Situations that once felt manageable now interrupt speech more easily. Multitasking makes word loss worse. Multitasking keeps cortisol mildly elevated throughout the day. When you're speaking while thinking about multiple things, the brain is already under stress. This increases the likelihood of word interruption because language centers are competing with stress signals for attention and energy. Common situations where cortisol affects speech. Women often notice word loss during stressful conversations, when speaking publicly or on calls, when rushed or interrupted, when tired or overstimulated. These patterns point to cortisol involvement, not memory loss. Why this feels so embarrassing. Speech pauses trigger self-consciousness, which raises cortisol further. This creates a loop. Stress interrupts speech, embarrassment increases stress, and speech becomes harder. Understanding the hormonal cause helps break this cycle. The pause isn't personal, it's physiological. Why this is often misinterpreted. Because word loss happens in social situations, women often blame anxiety or confidence. While emotions play a role, cortisol's biological effects explain why speech interruption happens so suddenly and consistently under pressure. Doctor-approved ways to reduce cortisol's impact on speech. Supporting speech clarity starts with calming the stress response. Helpful strategies include slowing breathing during conversations, reducing multitasking when speaking, protecting sleep and recovery, eating regularly to prevent blood sugar stress, managing daily stress to lower baseline cortisol. These habits help cortisol settle so language access returns. Cortisol doesn't just affect stress, it directly interrupts access to words during speech. After 30, reduced hormonal buffering makes this effect stronger. When stress hormones are calmed, speech flows more naturally again, and those mid-sentence blanks become far less frequent. Thyroid and brain speed, when language processing slows. When speech feels slower, not confused. Sometimes forgetting words doesn't feel like panic or pressure. It feels like your brain is moving through mud. You know what you want to say, but it takes longer to access it. Sentences come out more slowly, and conversation feels effortful. For many women after 30, this happens because thyroid hormones aren't delivering energy to language centers efficiently. How thyroid hormones support language speed. Thyroid hormones regulate how quickly brain cells produce energy and transmit signals. Language processing, especially word retrieval and sentence flow, is one of the most energy-dependent brain tasks. When thyroid signaling is strong, brain cells fire efficiently. Language centers communicate smoothly. Words are retrieved quickly and automatically. When signaling slows, the brain still works correctly, just more slowly. Why word finding can struggle, even with normal thyroid tests. Many women are told their thyroid labs are normal, yet still experience brain fog and slow speech. This happens because thyroid health isn't only about hormone levels in the blood, it's about conversion and cellular response. Stress, poor sleep, and inflammation can reduce how much active thyroid hormone reaches brain cells. The result is functional slowing without a formal diagnosis. Why this becomes more common after 30. After 30, the thyroid becomes more sensitive to stress hormones like cortisol. Elevated cortisol interferes with thyroid hormone conversion and blocks receptors in the brain. At the same time, fluctuating estrogen affects how thyroid hormones bind and signal. Together, these changes make language processing less consistent, especially during busy or exhausting periods. How poor sleep slows language processing. Sleep is when thyroid signaling resets. When sleep is light or fragmented, thyroid conversion is less efficient. Brain energy drops the next day. Language speed and recall suffer. This explains why word loss is often worse after poor sleep, even if total sleep hours seem adequate. Symptoms women commonly notice. When thyroid-related brain energy is low, women may experience slow word recall, pauses while speaking, feeling mentally heavy, reduced verbal stamina, brain fog that worsens with fatigue. These symptoms often improve after rest or reduced stress, which points toward hormonal involvement. Why this is often overlooked. Thyroid discussions often focus on weight or fatigue, not speech or cognition. Subtle language changes are rarely connected back to thyroid signaling unless symptoms become severe. Understanding that the brain is one of the most energy-sensitive organs explains why word-finding issues can appear early. Doctor-approved ways to support thyroid-driven language clarity. Supporting language speed means supporting thyroid communication. Helpful habits include consistent restorative sleep, managing stress to lower cortisol, eating balanced meals to support metabolism, avoiding extreme dieting, allowing true recovery between busy days. These signals help thyroid hormones reach the brain more effectively. Thyroid hormones regulate the speed and energy of language processing. After 30, stress, poor sleep, and hormonal shifts can slow thyroid signaling, making word retrieval feel delayed and effortful. This isn't cognitive decline. When thyroid communication improves, speech becomes smoother, faster, and more confident again. Blood sugar and verbal fog. Why words disappear. Suddenly. When the word is gone right when you need it. You may be speaking confidently, then suddenly hit a blank, especially if you're hungry, tired, or it's been hours since you last ate. The word vanishes mid-sentence, leaving you frustrated and confused. This pattern is very common in women after 30 and is often driven by blood sugar instability, affecting the brain's language centers. Why the brain needs steady fuel for speech. Your brain relies almost entirely on glucose for energy. Language and word retrieval are high-energy tasks. Unlike muscles, the brain cannot store fuel. It needs a steady supply at all times. When blood sugar is stable, language centers fire smoothly, and words are retrieved automatically. When blood sugar drops or fluctuates, the brain shifts into conservation mode, and non-essential functions like fluent speech slow down first. How insulin affects word recall. Insulin helps move glucose into cells, including brain cells. When insulin sensitivity is stable, the brain receives consistent fuel and thinking feels clear. After 30, insulin regulation often becomes more sensitive to chronic stress and elevated cortisol, poor or inconsistent sleep, hormonal shifts in estrogen and progesterone, skipped meals or restrictive eating. When insulin signaling is disrupted, blood sugar rises and falls more sharply, and the brain feels the effect immediately. Why blood sugar dips cause sudden word loss. When blood sugar drops, the brain reduces energy use in language areas. Word retrieval slows or pauses. Speech feels interrupted or blank. This can happen quickly, which is why word loss feels sudden and unexpected. The word isn't gone, the brain is temporarily conserving energy. Once blood sugar rises again, speech often returns to normal just as suddenly. Why this becomes more noticeable after 30. Earlier in life, the body compensates for blood sugar swings more easily. After 30, hormonal buffering decreases. Estrogen fluctuations affect insulin sensitivity. Progesterone decline removes calming support. Cortisol rises more easily and interferes with glucose control. This makes the brain more sensitive to even small fuel dips, increasing the likelihood of verbal fog and mid-sentence pauses. Common signs blood sugar is affecting speech. Women often notice word loss worse when hungry, speech improving after eating, mental fog in late morning or afternoon, feeling shaky or irritable with poor focus, clearer thinking after balanced meals. These patterns are important clues, not signs of poor concentration. Why this is often missed. Blood sugar issues are usually discussed in relation to weight or diabetes, not speech. Many women don't realize that verbal fluency is one of the first brain functions affected by glucose instability. As a result, women may blame stress or confidence instead of fuel supply. Doctor-approved ways to support blood sugar for clear speech. Supporting verbal clarity means supporting steady fuel. Helpful habits include eating regular meals without long gaps, including protein and fiber at meals, avoiding sugar-only snacks, managing stress to reduce cortisol, protecting sleep, which improves insulin sensitivity. These habits help keep language centers fueled and responsive. Forgetting words mid-sentence can be a fuel issue, not a memory issue. After 30, blood sugar and insulin fluctuations affect the brain more strongly, causing sudden verbal blanks. When glucose supply becomes steadier, speech flows more easily, and those frustrating pauses become far less common. A hormone-friendly reset for clear speech and confident recall. When words disappear mid-sentence, the solution is not to try harder or speak faster. Clear speech returns when the brain feels hormonally supported, fueled, and calm. After 30, your language centers need steadier signals throughout the day to stay sharp and accessible. This reset focuses on rhythm, nourishment, and nervous system safety, the foundations of fluent speech. Morning, prime the brain for language access. Word recall starts with how the brain wakes up. Rising at a consistent time helps regulate cortisol, which sets mental alertness for the day. Early natural light improves brain blood flow and supports estrogen's role in communication pathways. Eating a balanced breakfast within the first hour is especially important for verbal clarity. Including protein and healthy fats stabilizes insulin, ensuring the brain has steady fuel. Skipping breakfast or relying only on caffeine increases the risk of mid-morning word blanks and mental fog. Starting the day calmly, even briefly, prevents cortisol from dominating language centers before the day begins. Midday, protect language fuel and focus. The brain does not tolerate long gaps between meals. When blood sugar dips, the brain conserves energy by slowing non-essential tasks like word retrieval. Eating regular, balanced meals keeps glucose available for speech and thinking. Protein, fiber, and slow-digesting carbohydrates help maintain a steady supply. Gentle movement during the day improves circulation to language areas of the brain and supports estrogen and thyroid signaling. Avoiding constant multitasking is key. Speaking while mentally juggling tasks raises cortisol, which interrupts access to words. Single tasking, even briefly, makes speech smoother and more confident. Afternoon, prevent the word loss window. Many women notice word loss more often in the afternoon. This is when fatigue, stress, and blood sugar instability overlap. Eating on time, limiting excessive caffeine, and slowing the pace during this window protects verbal clarity. Short mental breaks help cortisol settle, allowing language centers to function without interruption. This is not about reducing productivity, it's about preventing overload that blocks speech access later in the day. Evening, calm the nervous system for tomorrow's clarity. Clear speech tomorrow depends on how well the brain rests tonight. Evenings filled with stimulation, heavy conversations, or constant scrolling keep stress hormones elevated. Dimming lights support melatonin, which coordinates overnight brain repair. Calm routines reduce cortisol and support progesterone's calming role, allowing language pathways to reset. Avoiding intense mental work late at night helps the brain release the day's stress instead of carrying it into sleep. Sleep where language pathways reset. Sleep is when the brain organizes memory, strengthens word connections, and restores processing speed. Consistent sleep and wake times help regulate cortisol, estrogen, thyroid hormones, and insulin, all of which affect verbal fluency. Even if sleep isn't perfect, consistency matters more than duration. Predictable sleep timing teaches hormones when to repair language networks. Confidence. Reduce the stress loop around speech. Fear of forgetting words raises cortisol, which increases the chance of forgetting again. Understanding that word loss is hormonal, not cognitive decline, reduces pressure. Speaking slowly, pausing naturally, and breathing calmly during conversation keeps cortisol low and words accessible. Confidence grows when the nervous system feels safe. Clear speech returns when the brain feels supported, not rushed. By stabilizing blood sugar, calming stress hormones, supporting estrogen and thyroid signaling, and protecting sleep, word recall becomes smoother and more reliable. You're not losing your words, your brain is asking for hormonal support, and when it gets it, fluent speech follows naturally. Conclusion. Forgetting words mid-sentence can feel unsettling, but it doesn't mean you're losing intelligence or memory. For many women after 30, these pauses are hormonal, not a sign of cognitive decline. Hormones like estrogen, progesterone, cortisol, thyroid hormones, and insulin all influence how easily your brain accesses language, and when they're out of balance, words can briefly slip out of reach. The reassuring truth is that this is often temporary and very responsive to gentle support. Small daily habits create powerful hormonal shifts. When you nourish your body, calm stress, stabilize blood sugar, and protect sleep, word recall usually becomes smoother and more confident again. Educational only, not medical advice. Like, subscribe, and share. Thank you for watching.